Hello and welcome to my tiny tarot practice. I'm Amelia Freebie, and on this show, I'm sharing my journey through the tarot as a student and lover of these cards. We're currently in the 5th season of the show where we're exploring the major arcana. This season is sponsored by Tarot for Creative Spirits by Cecily Saylor, which is a beautiful poetic workbook full of reflection questions, creative prompts, and honestly, just a full course of being with the tarot. It's quickly become my favorite text to turn to as I journey with the cards. And if you head to the show notes, there is an exclusive discount code for you to get your copy today. Today's card is the High Priestess. In the Rider-Waite-Smith edition of the tarot, the High Priestess depicts a person seated on a throne dressed in blue. They have a blue gown, a blue cloak, a blue hat that looks like the moon. They have a cross on their chest. They have the crescent moon at their feet. They're holding a scroll that perhaps might be the Torah. Behind them are two columns, one shrouded in darkness, the other in light. And there is a veil covered in pomegranates hung between them. And then even beyond that, there is water, just the glimpse of blue in the distance. When I encounter the High Priestess, I always feel like she oozes magic. Where the magician was making magic, as I talked about, the High Priestess simply is the magic. I love how Maria Minnis puts it in Tarot for the Hard Work that the magician leverages magic, while the High Priestess is magic. And I think this being magic feels so potent in the imagery of the moons and the pomegranates and these symbols of connection to our intuition and to the darkest creative depths of what it means to be human and beyond human. This card feels like a card of tapping into the deepest parts of ourselves and each other, and through that, connecting with all of us. One way to think of that might be tapping so deeply into our subconscious that we reach the collective unconscious. Another way is simply to believe in intuition and magic. Many interpretations of this card emphasize the receptive nature of the High Priestess. In Tarot for Creative Spirits, Cecily Saylor writes that, unlike the magician who creates through intention and action, the High Priestess does virtually nothing, or so it seems. But really, the High Priestess is listening, peering beyond the veil. And Jessica Dorr in Tarot for Change also points to this moment of the High Priestess as the receptive listener. She writes, "The High Priestess sits at the threshold of that moment when you realize you should be listening." And so as I receive these interpretations and develop my own, I'm just really struck by the High Priestess as an invitation to find a stillness, to go within, and to listen to what we are hearing both from within and without ourselves. I think there's an invitation here to open our ears, eyes, hearts, and minds, and to tap into the deepest reservoirs of our magic in the process. A very frequent image associated with the High Priestess, then, is also that of the moon. We see the moon in the Rider-Waite-Smith edition of the deck, and as I pulled out almost a dozen decks from my collection to look at this card, the majority of them featured the moon there as well. I think that there is something in the High Priestess and the connection to intuition and to water and to blueness that pulls in the image of the moon as well. And there is an echo of the moon card in the major arcana here as well, in these two pillars in the back of the card behind the priestess. There are also two pillars guarding the path to the water underneath the moon in that image in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And while the high priestess is often seen as the counterpart of the magician in the major arcana, similarly to how the empress is seen as the counterpart of the emperor, I often feel a real affinity between the Rider-Waite-Smith rendition of the high priestess and the Rider-Waite-Smith rendition of the Hierophant. I think there's something very evocative of religion in both of those cards. And of course, a priestess is the head of a religion, is the magic maker in the religion, or the vessel connecting to the magic, the divine in the religion. Well, similarly, but differently, the Hierophant is the, in my mind, sort of arbiter between the divine and the human in a different rendition of religion, in a different imagining of power. And so I think the high priestess also invites us to consider what stays behind the veil, who guards the access to what's behind the veil, who is allowed access behind the veil. And how do we understand our innermost connections to magic or to divinity in relationship to our understandings of contemporary religion? Thank you so much for listening to my tiny tarot practice and exploring the high priestess with me. This episode is sponsored by Tarot for Creative Spirits by Cecily Saylor, which you can find linked in the show notes with an exclusive discount code just for my tiny tarot practice listeners. As always, I am so grateful that you tuned in today, and I wish you the deepest reservoirs of inner magic in your practice.